Main Street, Gumbarrel City, Texas, on Thursday, June 9th at 6:05. I think that's 6:17 p.m. Roll call from my left. God's here.
Evans here.
LaRue here.
We have quorum. No citizens' comments? Thank you. Item 1A, presentation by Henderson County District Attorney on Crimes Against Children's Task Force. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. So I have with me our Sheriff Hillhouse, and this is Sheila Davis. She is the program manager over at our Maggie's House, which is our Children's Advocacy Center. And so we're going to talk to you about our Crimes Against Children Task Force. We started looking last year about the numbers of children in Henderson County who've been abused or neglected. And can you hear me okay over there?
I'm going to give this to you so you don't have to hold it.
Perfect, thank you. I felt like I was singing there. Perfect. We started looking at our numbers last year, and we realized that our abuse numbers are really on the rise in Henderson County, and that's true across the state and across the nation too. People are a lot of times surprised to learn the process of what happens when a child makes an outcry. So if you don't mind, I'll just give you a little bit of background about what happens. So if a child tells somebody at school or there's an allegation of abuse or neglect, the first thing that happens is law enforcement and Child Protective Services are notified. And the child has to be interviewed at Maggie's house by a trained forensic interviewer who is a neutral party. She's not part of law enforcement. And they interview that child in a separate room where the child tells the story of what happens. And that, our CAC, our Children's Advocacy Center, is in Athens. So when that happens, it's really important for law enforcement to be present, watching that interview in a different room. It's important for our prosecutors to be there watching that interview so we can decide very quickly how to make sure that that child is safe, that the person that's hurting them doesn't do it again. The next step during that investigation is there's a lot of things that happen. It's a time-consuming process. A lot of interviews has to happen, and those investigators need to be specially trained to just handle that type of crime. It's very nuanced. There's a lot of things that if you're not up to date on the training that you may not realize that goes into that, and it's very time-consuming. When the case comes to the district attorney's office who prosecutes all felonies, or the county attorney's office that prosecutes all misdemeanors, we meet with those victims, try to make sure they're getting the services that they need. And a lot of people are very surprised to learn that those children are going to have to testify. If they go to court, if that person pleads not guilty, the children will get on the stand. They have to testify. It's in a room where their abuser is as well. I ask questions of the child first, and then a defense attorney gets to cross-examine that child with that abuser right there. And it doesn't matter how old the child is. We've had children as young as 5 testify, and it's very traumatizing. So the more complete an investigation we have, the quicker we get services for those child, the better protection that we can have from. So Sheriff Hillhouse and I started talking about what we can do to try to ensure that we protect the kids as much as we can. We started looking at our numbers, and in 2020, and I have some numbers here, there were 251 interviews at the Children's Advocacy Center for children who had suspected have been abused or neglected. Of those, Gun Barrel came in number 3 with 6% of all those interviews. In 2021, we had 371 interviews, so we're kind of on a rise. Gun Barrel again came in number 3 to Athens at 8.6% of all of those interviews that happened. And in 2022, as of now, Sheila ran some numbers for us. We've done 181, and again, Gun Barrel is looking at about number 3 position behind Athens. So when we have these interviews with the children that are happening, it's important that there's somebody in Athens that is doing that investigation. It's very time-consuming. It's important that once a month we come to what's called an MDT meeting, and that is when all the parties get together, CPS, law enforcement, the DA's office, and we sit down and figure out what we need to do going forward, how we can help the child, how we can help other children. And I'm sure you know the expense to the cities is huge. We've got children who've been abused that need to go through counseling, receive medical care. There's truancy issues when kids have been abused. There's a lot of things that really go into that. And so when we're looking at this task force, we're thinking of a task force where any city that wants to participate, that agency takes the initial report and then they refer that case to the task force. Within 24 hours, it'll get assigned a team of investigators that will work together to get that investigation done very quickly. Along with the task force, we'll have somebody from Child Protective Services. There'll be a dedicated prosecutor that's handling that. There is a sexual assault nurse examiner who performs those exams on children who've been sexually abused. And this task force that we're talking about is one of the first of their kind. There's one other, it's in Collin County, but CAC of Texas, which is the big group for all of Texas, is really looking at us as a pilot program to set the bar for the rest of Texas. And I think that we could do really good things across the state of Texas. So we started talking to Chief Arnswald about participation in the task force. And, the investigator that handles these cases in Gun Barrel is very good, and they do a good job. The problem is they are so time-consuming, and it is really hard to get somebody to come all the time to Athens because it takes away about what's happening here in Gun Barrel, too. So the chief said that we could come over and visit with y'all and talk to you about our task force, what we would like to see happen. We've talked to a couple cities, and the first step that we've really done, we've had Chandler, Athens, and Eustis have done a resolution saying that they'll support the task force. The first was Chandler. At Chandler, and then we did Athens next, and Eustis was that last week? Last week. We've also talked to Brownsboro ISD, and this morning we talked to Malakoff ISD. So we're talking to them about the participation and what it looks like. We're hoping to be up and running on January 1st with all the agencies that are able to participate, participating. The sheriff's office, and I know he's going to speak to this a little bit, will have those designated investigators, specially trained, that will just handle this type of case, that will be housed at the Children's Advocacy Center, hopefully with somebody from Child Protective Services as well, because we keep growing. We're hoping that the cities that participate will first take the step to pass a resolution saying they support the task force. And we're looking at some sort of financial component of, if we're taking these cases, we need more investigators. And so we've talked to some of the cities about what type of monetary contribution yearly that we're looking at. I've talked to the city manager at Athens about what Athens is really thinking. We're hoping that Athens and Gun Barrel will talk about maybe between the two of you, since you're 2 and 3, splitting the cost of one position on the task force. And so that's something I know that the sheriff is going to speak to as well. Next week, we're talking to Trinidad and Payne Springs. I'm hoping Log Cabin and Maybank are going to be close behind, but we still have a lot of work to do on our end. I think it will save the cities a lot of time, and I think it'll be a big benefit both to our children, but also the cities as well. So I talked a lot. I'm a lawyer. I hope I use my lawyer voice, and you can all hear me. But Sheriff, I don't know if you had some other things to add.
Thank y'all for taking the time to meet with us. It means a lot to us. Like District Attorney Palmer said, the unit will actually be supervised through the sheriff's office. We've done task forces in the past, not like this. It was a drug task force, but we know how they work. Y'all were actually, Gun Barrel City was a part of that, and y'all actually furnished manpower at the time. Unfortunately, right now in the law enforcement community, we are struggling to fill positions. And I am blessed with having the jail, which I still have issues filling some of the jail spots, but I kind of have a pool of people that already work for me that I'm sending to the academy that are being trained, so I can pull from them and promote them up. And like the city of Gun Barrel doesn't have those resources, basically. So I think I can get these positions filled. I already have 3 investigators right now that work nothing but these cases. I'm moving some employees around. I'm going to go ahead and add another one to it. So I'll furnish 4 of them. And the sheriff's office has already taken about 75%, roughly 75% of these cases are already belong to the sheriff's office. And I think be able to take on the rest of the county, it's going to take at least 2 other investigators to do so. So the task force really, we're wanting it to start out with 6 employees. And that's basically why we're here. We'll have an investigator. Of course, we want the initial agency to take the report and then forward it over to us within 24 hours. However, we will be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we need to come out and respond, that the unit members of that task force will be on call and can do so. And that's pretty much all, all I have. I'm glad that District Attorney Palmer brought the idea to me and actually brought the numbers out to where we really started studying it. We knew it was an issue, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And so we're trying to do that. And hopefully, like she said, we'll be able to be the pilot program for the state of Texas. Kevin Halbert, my chief deputy, is at the Chief Deputies Conference right now. And he called me, my days are running together, but he called me earlier this week, and Child Protective Services in Austin have been talking about us also, and they're wanting to jump on board with us and possibly put an investigator housed at the Child Advocacy Center with us, which would be outstanding. We've already been in talks with them, but I'm excited to hear, not only is the Child Advocacy, the CAC of Texas talking about us, Child Protective Services in Austin's talking about us. We're getting some momentum, and we're just doing everything we can to take care of our kids.
With these other two individuals you're talking about, would they be housed in Athens or?
Yes, sir. They'll be housed at the Child Advocacy Center all together right there in Athens.
The other question I have is, you mentioned school districts. That is a big, that's a big source of getting information about kids.
Yes, sir.
Because I have two daughters that are school teachers, and I hear a lot of horror stories of kids coming with bruises and this and that. How would these schools, they have their own resource officers, how does this interface with this?
Basically the same way it would interface with the other police agencies out there. Most of the crimes against children, as far as in independent school districts, most of those crimes aren't going to happen at the school district, but they are a wealth of knowledge. They help us every day during these investigations, and they would just give us the information that we need and work with us, on a daily basis. Now, if something did happen, we're hoping they'll join on with us. And everybody that we've talked to so far seem really excited, and looks like they're going to move forward. But they'll work with us just as the cities would. Well, as far as, we talked, and it looks like Gun Barrel Athens is number 2, and then Gun Barrel City was number 3. So to be able to take on those cases would basically one investigator plus a little bit of equipment money. When I say equipment, I mean computers, recorders, stuff like that, all together with benefits, salary, and the numbers I'm going to give you is actually, I don't know. I'm asking for raises this year. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I don't want to give y'all a low number and then have to come right back. So $80,000 would cover it. Now, that's not all from Gun Barrel City. I mean, if y'all partnered with the city of Athens, one investigator could take the city of Athens cases and the city of Gun Barrel cases. Yes, sir.
Essentially, a commitment between the two cities that we would be responsible for half if we make that commitment along with them doing the same.
Yes, sir.
I'm really glad you asked that question about the school districts and their wealth of information. I don't know if you want to turn it on. So one of the things that the three of us and some other agencies do as well is Go Blue. Have y'all heard about Go Blue? So it's an awareness campaign. Oh, he's got our Go Blue shirt on, those blue shirts that you see. It's an awareness campaign that we have to spread awareness about child abuse. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to get schools to invite us in to not only talk to the kids about safe touch, make them aware that it's okay to tell somebody about what's happening, but we also want to talk to the teachers, the administrators, and the counselors about what to do if they think something's going on. Because I think that is just an educational tool that we can have. The sheriff and I went in, it's been a couple years, to a different school and talked to the kids about safe touch. And we had a child come forward afterwards and say, you mean that I can tell somebody now about what happened to me when I was 5 and you can do something about it? And that man was prosecuted and sent to prison. So that is pretty amazing. And I think the more that we all are talking about it, the more that information gets out there and the better that we can do. And I know that Sheila can really speak to the services that Maggie's House really provides these kids, if you have questions about that as well.
Well, one of our main services is our forensic interview services. It's kind of an awkward position here so I can see everybody. We provide forensic interviews for children where there's allegations of abuse or neglect. We provide a family advocacy service, and our family advocates, they will maintain contact with the family monthly and more often if needed, if there's something going on or they need services. And that's mainly to refer out for counseling or maybe family therapy, or maybe they just need some financial resources that the Help Center can help them with. We also do a case management system where we follow the cases from the time they come in until prosecution. And we maintain contact with the family throughout that time. We house the medical exam room, and so we can conduct acute exams, which means that something has happened within 4 days, and so they get them in as soon as we can. If it's outside the period of 4 days, it's called a non-acute exam, and we also do those at the center.
Do you go as far as remove kids from homes, put them in foster care, or?
That's something that CPS does. We all work together with CPS, but we're not the actual agency that does that.
CPS would handle that through you all, or?
And we all work together as a team.
So there's two different parts, there's two components. We have our civil component, which is child protective services. So if you hear about the CASA workers, the court-appointed special advocates, they all handle what happens with the child, where they go, do they need to be removed, do they need to be in foster care, do their parents need to work services? They handle that aspect of it, and then law enforcement and the DA's office or the county attorney's office handle the criminal aspect, which is how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we make sure they get justice? So they're two different components, but they work side by side.
I have a question, and I feel almost ignorant for asking it. This is a good program. I personally, this is exactly what I think we should be doing. I can't help but wonder, is there another side to this that's probably that mammoth Goliath part of number 3? Somebody's got to be a number somewhere, but wouldn't it be nice to see those numbers go down? And that's what's really, it's like I'm feeling that right now. I'm like, this is a great thing. It's great to rescue somebody from that environment. It would have been a whole lot better to help them not get into it. And I literally have no clue what y'all even do to try and do that.
All about education. If we can get in the schools and start talking to kids right away, because each offender, each person that's sexually abusing these kids is sexually abusing other children, and they're not going to stop until we put them in prison. So the sooner a kid tells, the sooner we can protect that child from it happening again and other children too. So I think education is a key component about all of this as well.
Well, and we have, Packet Texas has this new campaign, Upstream, Catching Kids Upstream. And so hopefully through education, they may not get in a situation, unless it's not their fault, I didn't say that right, but, they're able to maybe get out of a situation, to prevent something. And so that's their whole campaign, is catching our kids upstream before.
I do think that we will see an uptick of numbers initially, because when children are making outcries, we learn that they also abused another person. And so our numbers are going to increase. The goal is, though, eventually, the numbers go down.
Jeff, are we ready to put this on the agenda in June?
Yeah, one thing I could add, I spent 20 years as a specific crime investigator. And you get really good at what you do when you specialize in one thing. And to ask our police officers who are out running calls every day, to then be faced with a dead child or a child that's been severely abused or neglected, it's really difficult. We had a case, and we talk about a case where no one's in jail yet for the death of an 8 or 9-month-old baby. And it's just an injustice. And having people that work in an environment every day, they get really good at what they do. They become highly specialized, and we get more prosecutions, we get more arrests, we get more convictions. And I think it's a win-win for our city. I've had conversations with Elizabeth Borstad, the city manager in Athens, about sharing that personnel year. I think it's much better to have one person in charge of that entire task force. I think, the purpose of today having Jenny and Bodie here is to share with you before I asked you whether we should participate. Because I think as the former police chief, the interim police chief, nothing's more important than the safety of our kids. And we simply, as we grow, it's going to be really hard for us as a city to keep up with the law enforcement needs in general. And you talk about, okay, we're 10%, that's 37 kids. That's a lot, and I think Jenny's right that the more the word gets out, the more likely other kids are gonna say, you know what, my friend reported it, maybe it is okay that I report too. And the numbers go up just because of awareness and the willingness to participate. And I don't know, Richard, how we ever stop it. It's just a human nature, it's a human psychology thing, but I think we're,
Have a reputation for being the place that if you do that, and this is y'all's world, not ours, but I heard a statement made by law enforcement down in Florida, county sheriff down in Florida, about the recent shooting. He was very passionate when he made the comment that, to the people, he said, if a person wants to come into our county and threaten our kids, he said, we will shoot you graveyard dead. And yeah, I thought about that. He sounds like he's from our neck of the woods. I don't know that I would use those exact words, but I know they're in my heart that I would want anyone who thought about hurting a child to think that about our community, that this is the wrong place.
well, I think being the second largest city in the county, we're gonna continue to grow. And we're gonna put a burden on the DA's office, we're gonna put a burden on the sheriff's office. And I think because we are large, irrespective of how we obtain our revenue, I think we should be one of the front runners in participating in the program personally.
We need to be a leader in this. We don't need to be a follower.
We can find a way to cover the cost of that, because there's nothing more precious than our young children.
One other aspect is we're protecting our investigators too. When they have a team in that task force, we have a prosecutor, everybody's working together, your burnout rate, I think, is really going to drop. And that's one of the issues that we faced is when they feel like they're out there by themselves looking at really terrible things, they burn out a lot quicker. And we're hoping this team aspect, this camaraderie that we're going to have, is going to increase the longevity of these investigators as well.
You mentioned the resolution earlier. What exactly goes into that? What have the other cities done? What are you asking from us specifically about that?
Sure. So the resolution that the other cities had was that they wanted, their city was going to be a part of the task force and they were going to support financially. And that was the first step, and then we're going to go through the budget process with all of them too.
We get a copy of
I can, I'll send it to you
a
tomorrow.
resolution, and we can kind of come up, I'll give it to you, we come up with, I'll provide a copy to you, and then we can come up with our own wording.